Alright, so we're going to add a little bit to these pieces right here. And I'm going to show you my method of modeling for texture. Okay, so the idea that we don't just model. We have to think how it's going to be textured and then model. That way the texturing lines up and everything. So we used to just slap a texture on a surface and we said, okay, well that looks good because it's a projection of the actual image. But nowadays in games, you'll find that things have ridges, that they have depth. And this is because the idea of having a single texture drive depth is an obsolete idea. We actually build depth from geometry and then texturize those pieces. They cause depth. So here's an example. Just going to duplicate this part. So if this part is going to have a thing called general store on the front of it, that's good. But again, this part might be invaluable later on. So here's an example. Okay, see how much more depth that brings it? Alright, now, it would be nice to have something that is like a thinner trim piece, okay, and develop that. So to develop it, what I'll do is make a copy of this. Shift D. This is going to be my beta piece. Control R. I'll move that up. Duplicate that. Control E. I could think of many occurrences that I would use something like this as a part. Here, I'll show you. So let's say I needed it here. Okay, it would fit there quite nicely. Can even lower it down. Gives it a lot more depth, right? And nobody knows that's a separate piece. And then I'll take the example down here and say, well, I want to add some more to this kind of trim. There we go. Nobody's the wiser that it's the second piece. So think of it that way. Think when it comes to trim, you can't go wrong with making extra pieces because you never know what else you're going to develop later on in life. Here's another piece. And of course, all this stuff can be shrunk down. Okay, there we go. See? Love that. So I want a piece that looks like that. And here's another tip. You're better off texturizing it while it's really big than really small. Because that way, when you upscale it, the texture doesn't compress and look bad. Or decompress. So, you can't stretch out the texture that way. So I'm going to make a smaller one just like this. This is my general sign. This is going to be a trim piece. This will be a trim piece. Let's see if there's anything else I might need. Kind of want a smaller variation of this that looks like this. Hold on. I'd use this piece all the time. Oops. Something like that might come in useful. Oops. Control E. And this is why I like to do a long normal. There we go. So I want one of those for future use too. You're like, why am I producing all these extra parts if I'm not going to use them? Well, you'd be surprised. You will use them. We're making a variation of this. And look at that. Doesn't that look neat? And what happens if you scale it? See, it works very universal, so I want to keep that as a piece. So this is what I usually do for a little while, is I'll think of ideas that could span over into other genres or other parts of the town. If I'm going to develop a whole town, if I'm just focused on a building, I still think town, not just building. Alright, I think that's it as far as what I'll need. I like this idea. I'm just going to add a UV sphere to the mix. Nobody likes that part because it's damaged. Let's add a mesh cube in here. Let's do it the right way. This needs to be a separate part. Sorry. Separate by selection. Let's just go in here and add a modifier to it. Apply that modifier. And I think in trim work, another thing that might be nice is have a semicircle that we can mount on surfaces. Transform origin to geometry. Since they mount on surfaces, we could take the idea of leaving the back off. Scale that down. And if we did a smooth shading for it, it looks just like that. Okay, so I want that as a piece too. Now you should do this. Why don't you develop one piece of molding that you could use over and over again, and then when you're done, you already know how to texturize pieces. What I want you to do is texturize this family of pieces. Okay? And this family of pieces all get the same type of texture. Do they get the same kind of map? No. And I'll explain that in the next video.